From Isaiah 9, verses 2 through 7. It is found in page 624 of your Pew Bible. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For all the boots of the trampling warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be buried as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom. He will establish and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this.
And so a few announcements. We will be using the center aisle for our actors to enter and exit. So please keep the center aisle clear. There will also be hymns sung throughout. We ask that you sing with us and that you may remain seated during the singing of those hymns. And now is the time, if you have a costume, now is the time that you're going to want to head to the back of the church and we will get started. So without further ado, I introduce Zach to you.
Good evening. Christmas is a great chance to tell stories. And tonight, we'll be telling a very important story, the story of the birth of Christ. Sometimes when I tell stories, I like to pretend that I'm actually in the story. If everyone could please put on your imagination glasses, you will see that we are not actually at Lutheran Church of the Cross. We are actually on the hillside outside of Bethlehem. Bethlehem is a small town a few miles south of Jerusalem. Mary and Joseph had to go to Bethlehem because Caesar Augustus had made a law that everyone must be counted in the towns where their great-great-grandparents had been born. This was a long trip to travel by foot. It would have been even more difficult since Mary was pregnant. As we begin our story, we ask that you sit back, relax, and make sure your imagination glasses are firmly attached as we hear the story of Christ's birth. Long, long ago, at the start of our story, long before the coming of Christ in his glory, there were many wise people, prophets of old, who had messages from God, some told, some untold. These people, the prophets, they had a lot to say about the coming of Jesus, about his birth, Christmas Day. Then, when the world would least expect, when nobody knew whom God would select, a young girl, so meek and so mild, was chosen by God to give birth to the child. The air was still, the stars were bright. The world was at peace on that holy night.
Jesus laid down his sweet head.
There in a stable with animals all around, with birds in the rafters and straw on the ground, Mary had her baby with Joseph standing by. They wrapped him in a blanket so he'd be warm and wouldn't cry. They put him in a manger, the cows' eating place, in the love that they had felt shown on each happy face. Meanwhile, in a field not too far away, among the rolling green hills and the rocks brown and gray, the trees were all resting their heads in their hands in the still of the evening throughout all the lands. Then, all of a sudden, without any warning, the sky was ablaze just like it was morning. There were angels, lots and lots of angels. There were angels all around, in bunches and clusters, in the air, on the ground. They sang out the news of this glorious event. They told of Christ's birth with great joy, and they went. Their voices rang out over all the earth to spread to God's people the news of his birth. The shepherds who watched their flocks on that night were astonished, overwhelmed, and they quivered with fright. When the angels first came to tell them the news, they stumbled and fell and shook in their shoes. But the angel said, "Shepherds, do not be afraid. We bring you good news of the birth of a babe. Go see for yourselves. His home is a stable. You'll find him asleep, a manger, a cradle."
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plain, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? What glad tidings did inspire your heavenly song? Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo.
While the shepherds adored the babe in the manger, far out in the desert were 3 kings in danger. They followed a star which led to the place where lay the new king of the whole human race.
We 3 kings of of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Here in the manger, the baby, the mother, with animals and birds of one kind or another. Here are the angels, kings, shepherds, and sheep. Stars and trees stand in silence, the baby's asleep. From prophets of old to all here in these pews, this is the gospel, this child, God's good news. We have been on a story journey this evening. We have learned more about the first Christmas as we met Mary and Joseph, heard the angels talk to the shepherds, and saw the wise men bring gifts to the manger. Most importantly, we have learned about God, who loved creation enough to send Jesus to be born as a baby, live among humans, and even die so that he could be raised again to save us from our sins. God's gift of Jesus wasn't just for the people 2,000 years ago, but is a gift for us today. As we share our lives with those around us, we share the gift of God's love with the world. Now may you all have a very blessed Christmas as we celebrate God's love born for us all.
Mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. While shepherds kept their watching o'er silent flocks by night, behold, through all the heavens there shone a holy light. Tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. The shepherds feared and trembled when low above the earth rang out the angel chorus that hailed our Savior's birth. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Down in a lowly manger, the humble Christ was born. And God says, "Oh, salvation, that blessed Christmas morn." Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born.
Please stand with me for the Christmas Creed.